Gee, Bob, back to the time thing for a second now, if we might. You're saying, A, it would be possible.
Well, it's not only possible, it happens quite often. I mean, this sounds really far out, but it's known scientific fact that the closer you are to a strong gravity force, the slower time moves. Time, gravity, and space are all intertwined like that. In fact, there was a famous experiment that was done. 2 synchronized atomic clocks were placed side by side. They read the same time, and one was put at sea level, the other was put up at either in a plane or a high mountaintop. I don't recall which. And when they were brought back together, they both read different times. That was because of the change in gravity. One was further over to that area near the event horizon, or somehow was able to survive it, spent a second there. You could come back to Earth and 1 billion years could have elapsed. You know, the time reference is completely changed. So the whole key is distorting gravity, creating a strong gravitational field, which in fact is how these crafts they have at S4 are powered. And
they bend or jump through bends in space or create bends in space. How would you explain that, Bob?
Well, they essentially create them. They're using a device to artificially create gravity. This device, in turn, part of its nature, gravity distorts time and space. It bends space. It bends time. And this is how they travel. The discussion I got into, John, was, well, gee, is it possible to build something like that? Well, yeah, if you did have an antimatter reactor, a gravity amplifier, and somehow it could contain the field so it wouldn't crush the occupant. And
yeah, I guess I know where there's a gravity amplifier, just not too many miles from here, huh?
Right, getting it's the problem.
So if you could put your hands on something like that, that might be then one practical application of the alien technology.
Well, is it that practical, though?
Well, that's a good question.
Something like that, and could turn it on, sit in a chair, and there's really, I don't see any way of going back, but theoretically there should be.
I did ask John this, and let me try it on you. He couldn't answer it, said I ought to ask you. If you could, first of all, could a biological entity pass through a black hole without being disrupted or something? And if so, what would be on the other side, Bob?
I don't know, and I don't believe anyone does know. There just isn't enough information about black holes to come up with that answer. As a guess, you look at it from a physical standpoint, the gravitational tidal forces entering the black hole should absolutely obliterate anything that even comes near it. But, stranger things have happened, and maybe not. So really, who knows?
How much technology are you missing, aside from the gravity amplifier, the ability to make a time machine, or in fact something that would cause you to travel through time? Are we missing a lot of other technology, or given the gravity amp, could you go from there?
Well, you really don't even have to do that. Another way is, just accelerating close to the speed of light slows time also. That doesn't take any technology, so it's probably not the safest thing to do.
What would theoretically occur to somebody who either came to... Is it possible, Bob, to exceed the speed of light in the physical universe without bending, warping space to do it?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. As you got near the speed of light, what would occur in all likelihood to a biological entity?
All kinds of things. First of all, it would, because of several things that occur, one of them being is mass increase. As you approach the speed of light, you begin to increase in mass, and therefore it requires more energy to propel you further, or faster rather. You kind of get stuck in a little loop there.
So then great distances really are never going to be traveled that way?
No, they can't be. That just isn't practical. On top of that, you can go on for a long time about that. It's not practical. It really isn't.
Okay. I guess you left the project with the discs at one point. You do our audience a great favor by describing in as much detail as you're able to what it is you saw and worked on, Bob.
I worked on one particular craft that I called the sport model because of its very sleek appearance. Specifically, like I mentioned before, there was a small reactor that was removed from the craft, and we essentially back-engineered it. What we needed to do was find out not only how it worked, but also very important to the project was to see if this technology could be duplicated. One of the main problems in any kind of aircraft is power, and with a tremendous amount of power, you can basically do anything. And here's a reactor that operates, many times more efficiently than a fission reactor, or more efficiently than a fusion reactor, which we haven't even developed yet, ever could. And it supplies a tremendous amount of power, and this is essentially where we decided to start from, was to work from here and then go on. But all the time that they had this and the time that I spent there, the short time that I spent there, really there's just not a lot you can do. We just don't have the materials to duplicate it.
Any ideas what this craft was made of? What kind of metal or substance it was?
I say it's metal just because I felt it. It felt cold. It had the appearance of metal. The grain structure appeared to be metal, but I don't know. I'm sure John has mentioned, the information is very compartmentalized. And
could you describe the interior of the craft? Were you inside?
Interior was very bare. There had been some equipment removed from it. There was a reactor. There were 2 seats. There were 2 consoles left, one large console. I call them a console. There was nothing on top. One of them was removed. I believe they're part of the gravity amplifiers that are connected directly underneath. They're in a triad formation.
These are going to be some silly questions, Bob, but were there windows? I mean, by what manner could you see or understand any of the technology that was in front of you? Normal buttons, switches, gauges, or... Really wasn't anything like that. Buttons and switches. It really wasn't even wiring. I know that sounds really bizarre, but it really isn't that strange. A lot of the equipment, it almost appeared to be something similar to a Tesla coil. The way so every time I hit on a topic, I have to regress. And sure, I understand
what I'm talking about. But it almost seemed like every piece of equipment was tuned to whatever it was supposed to be receiving signals from, and it was essentially electrical power transmission without wires, which is not something far out. There was something a man named Tesla accomplished in the 30s. However, this seemed to be along the same lines, but much more advanced.
Well, while we're on the subject, do you think mankind will ever manage to bring power from space to Earth through some method or another? It's the same sort of technology, I presume.
I don't know. That's about the best I could say about that.
Okay. Well, anyway, back to these. What was it like when you went into them? I mean, I can only imagine they would lead you in, these guys with their little badges and so forth, and they would lead you into the area you were going to be working on these things, and you must have looked at them and said, "You've got to be kidding."
Well, I only got to physically view the craft twice. Once was when I went inside to see the placement of the parts that I was to be concentrating on. The other one was in a short flight test.
A flight test.
I wasn't inside. I saw it from inside the hangar.
And what did you see?
Just lifted off the ground, almost silently. It had a slight hissing sound to it. Then drifted. It was quite amazing. I mean, I speak of it nonchalantly right now, but it's, there again, this was several years ago.
Wow. Again, back for a second to magnetism, large magnetic fields have indeed done strange things. Do you recall anything of the story, the Philadelphia experiment?
I've heard a lot about